I think I had to really give myself permission to be vulnerable, which is also a really big problem for many of us entrepreneurs. We just don't want to mess with that, or we're very uncomfortable with it, or we had those learned lessons going, maybe like you said, going back to the old childhood days, pick yourself up and take care of it. And we do. And
Yeah.
it's good to be strong, but it's good to share where you need support. And a lot of times people really are comforted by hearing that from you if you're a leader in the industry.
Welcome to Reward, the podcast of The Trust. We are the show specifically for women entrepreneurs who want to build businesses into the multi-million-dollar revenues and beyond, but especially because we know the reward is much greater than that. I'm Allie Brown, and I'm excited to introduce you to these diverse female leaders from a variety of industries, women making huge impact and who are unwilling to settle for the status quo. On the web, visit jointhetrust.org to learn more about our modern community for forward-thinking 7- and 8-figure women entrepreneurs. That's jointhetrust.org. See you there. Now, get ready to enjoy this episode's powerful conversation. Sarah Beth Aubrey. Hi.
Hello, Allie Brown.
It's good to see you.
It is always good to see you. It hasn't been too long. We had a trust meeting in September, but it's great to do this today.
Yeah. And we were just in the pre-chat. I swore you were on Reward already, but I was on my former show, Glambition. So, which means it was a few years ago. So I'm excited to have you back on because there are many women who may have not had the privilege of hearing from you and learning about you. But also there's a lot's happened and been happening and you've made happen over the last few years. So, I'd love though to start with, I always find, and I know you grew up, just surrounded by farms and in this kind of lifestyle, which to us is just this whole idyllic. I picture you having this idyllic childhood running around with horses and animals and which kind of it's still part of your life today, right? There's some of that. So I'd love to just start, before we get into today, just tell us the evolution of Sarah Beth Aubrey.
Okay. Well, sure. Well, thanks for having me on. I love the Reward podcast, and I love working with you through the trust and through the coaching that we've done over the years. And so it's an honor to be on today and to get to share some of my story, and hopefully that is inspiring and valuable to your listeners. And I'm a listener too, so this is a great chance. So my story. It's always fun to talk about these origin things. So I'll address the idyllic so-called childhood thing first. And, we really did have a good childhood, no doubt. We grew up modestly. I grew up on a grain and livestock farm in central Illinois. For many people, the flyover states, one of the I states. And my family's been in agriculture and farming for many, many generations. So it's just something that didn't seem even unique or special. And I always knew I would have a career as in some aspect related to that industry. But I was always ready to go do something else. I mean, I remember being a little kid and I was always signing up for things and always wanted to be president of everything. And always, I was very bossy, but like a lot of people that have some measure of success. I think we were early natural leaders or something else. And so, but I was always ready to do something else. I didn't even go to my last year of high school. I graduated, but I did an internship with a government agency that I found and applied for and did this. And they took this high school kid and didn't even live at home. I know. So I always had these other ambitions. And there was I guess a little bit of a push-pull with that, right? Because the home was where the heart is, and agriculture and home and the farm were very special to me and continue to be. But there was always that part of me that said, this isn't exactly the place where I'm going to spend forever. There's other things that I need to do. And I think I can support some of the industry that I love by moving in that direction. So went to college in Illinois at University of Illinois. Many years later, got a master's at Purdue University, so your big land grant Midwestern universities. Pursued communications. You'll love this, Allie, so here's a little one that you'll like. I always thought when I was a kid, I wanted to give the farm news as a career. I'd watch the news with my grandpa and the news at noon, and they'd give the markets and they'd tell about the prices, and I thought that was a swanky career. And
you get to dress up nice and be on TV.
So I thought I was a TV anchor and specifically to do that. Now I got to college and I realized that was not for me. I loved speaking and being in front of the room, but I didn't like reporting on the news. I liked this process of helping people work through their pain points. And I found that early on. And so my career moved more into that direction, into that facilitation, training, speaking, leading organizations through change. It went in that direction pretty quickly. I started out in a sales job with an international brand, moved into sales training with them, then went to a consulting firm. And then at 26, started my first business. So
Wow.
we kind of get into
You and I
that.
were about the same age. You and I were about the same age. I don't know about you, but I remember just looking around going like, well, if these people can do it,
Oh yeah.
because I was surrounded by, I don't want to say a bunch of clowns, but that last ad agency I was at, I was like, oh my, I remember just going like, oh my gosh, these people are just successful despite themselves. And the clients like me. And I think I could go do some of this on my own.
Oh gosh.
So how did that happen for you? Like, what was the moment?
Well, the moment was the pantyhose lady. So I had gone from ag to a broker. I was a stockbroker for 3 years because I got off the road. I got married to my husband. I know you didn't know that. And I really got into that, and I worked for a local brokerage. Nice, interesting job. Really learned a lot. I still take the Wall Street Journal, read it every day. It's been great from a standpoint of our own business. But the linchpin on the starting my own career or my own thing was the pantyhose lady. And it was just kind of that thing, you're looking around going, is this all there is? And I know I'm only 26, but I'm like, is this all there is? The guys in the office, I was the only woman that wasn't a secretary. And so we had a dress code, and it was serious. The guys would come in and they'd be wearing khakis and polos. And if they were golfing that day, it was shorts, and none of that was allowed. But they didn't get yelled at. This one woman kept on talking to me about my dress code, and I didn't wear pantyhose. And one day I wore tights, and she told me that I got a letter that was sexy and inappropriate, and because tights were trendy, and she showed me the manual, but the guys were doing whatever they wanted, and I was like you. I'm like, the clients like me. I have a lot to offer. I'm gonna do something else. Is why I left, and that was 21 years ago this November.
And you never looked back.
No, I haven't.
I love that story. That needs to be part of your story at some point, the pantyhose lady. Yeah, it's like one thing that just pushed you over the edge. You're like, that's it. If these clowns can make a living, so can I.
Yes, I totally felt that way. And I was like, I'm wasting my time getting yelled at by this woman because of my leg wear. Are you joking?
Yeah. And I think tights are very appropriate, by the way. God knows what people were in today. You're just like, oh Lord. So, we were pretty covered up back then. So tell everyone how you got into the first businesses. Now, I know you've had a few business. You've been very much a serial entrepreneur. I mean, everything from meats to grant writing. Can you go through a few of the businesses you started?
Yes, I have started and sold 3 businesses, and I'll definitely do that again. I have 2 entities today, and in taking the advice that people have given both you and I over the years and our peers, and I do that today. When I start a company, I build it ready to sell it. Maybe not today, but I know that that's probably where I'm going to go. And so I had 2 businesses that kind of launched simultaneously. One was in doing strategic planning, leading steering committees through change. I had done that work with the consulting firm where I was an employee before I went to the brokerage. And they called and said, hey, we need a contractor. And I thought, okay. So I began to do a little of that contract, and then quickly was doing that on my own. And that launched the grant writing firm. And that was really, those steering committees and organizations, they're looking for funds. And they asked me as part of my contract, would you write us a grant? And I said, well, I guess. I mean, I don't know how to write a grant, but they said, you'll figure it out. And so I did write them a grant, and we lost. And I was stunned and furious, but also kind of thinking, well, I really didn't know what I was doing. So I began to embark on calling the government agencies, and I just went and saw these guys. And I went to see this old man in DC. I flew there to go see him. And I went to this basement, and he had to clear off his desk, and it looked like—
Didn't you tell me, like, no one had ever come to see him? They're like, you have a visitor. He's picturing his crusty little office, like in the bowels of the building, like
100% picturing exactly correct.
With his little Dockers on.
Yeah, I don't know what he wore because he was just behind this desk, and he just was so stunned that this young woman came to see him, and he was so nervous and alarmed. And I was, of course, I had my Midwestern politeness, and he was very. I tried to be endearing to the guy, and it turned out we made a good friendship. And he really helped me understand the programming, and it developed a business. And I ended up developing a method that goes on today. And I sold that business in 2015. But it was just really that temerity to go, "Oh, I don't know what I'm doing, so I better go find out." Some of the people that had the knowledge were willing to share it. They'd just never been asked. So it
Yeah.
became, and that's I guess a through line for me in my career is I don't I don't necessarily want to follow the herd. I like to find the business there's a gap, and we want to fill that, and there's a service that needs to be there. And the meat business
Mm,
was the same. As I grew up on a farm, and people were starting to get interested in natural meats and where their food came from, at the end of the 90s and the early 2000s.
mhm.
So we started that and started selling meat to restaurants and farmers markets and all of that kind of stuff. And we did that for several years, and I sold that business in 2008.
Okay, so let's fast forward to the world of today. Do you want to
Yeah.
give kind of a snapshot of your businesses and what you do?
Yeah, sure. So today I have two companies. I pulled them apart into two businesses 2 years ago. Best decision I ever made. I've always had more of that service-based consulting type of enterprise, but these began to get really divergent in what they did. And so I have advocacy coalitions, and we do grassroots coalition building for issues around energy, food, and agriculture. And then I also have Envoy Group, which is a rebranded name from my old name, Elevate. I changed 2 years ago. And that is really where we're doing the work for corporate individuals and entrepreneurs on developing themselves and their businesses. So we're doing corporate retreats, a totally done for you service. We do a lot of facilitation, leading boards and organizations through change, a lot of front of the room work, executive coaching, and I do a lot of speaking as well. And our
Mm,
industries are mostly agriculture, energy, and food, but we do some other things that touch that well, manufacturing, sustainability, and a few other things. But I've tended to stay in that lane. We don't have to work there if we have other off projects here and there, but it's been a good niche for us.
yeah. The last several years, I've been privy to witness, but also I know you've shared publicly about a lot of the changes that you've decided to make in your businesses and also your evolution as a leader. And I wonder if you could just share a bit with all the women listening, a few things that maybe you wish you'd known earlier or that you've learned in the last few years and you think were really pivotal in the new directions that you are taking things.
Yeah, I will say two things. One was a personal transition, and the other one is to answer your question. What have I learned? And I think one of the most important things to learn is to not spread yourself too thin with too many projects that don't pay well enough. Now, that sounds like a silly thing, doesn't it? But you remember when I first came to work with you in Premier, which was your coaching program at the time? Remember what we did? We put all of this stuff up on the board, and you just started marking through this. And it was the type, you're like, we're firing them, they're fired, that's done, I'm out. And I was just sort of delighted and in shock and desperation at the same time. It was all the things I had been thinking for a while because I was still in the small mindset of building the business because people called and they asked. And I was really fortunate that most of my business was entirely referral based. I did very little marketing. And so
Mm,
that's great. And if you have that position, you should consider yourself fortunate. And if you don't, I think for many people who work all online, you need to work that angle of your business if you're not, because that is something you own and you drive the bus on that versus relying on only marketing and social and things. So there's some fortunate stuff
mhm,
in there, but the projects were too many, too small, too spread apart. And so I think if you can begin to do that sooner than I did, firing clients, repurposing clients, and I didn't just fire everyone, I did some revenue sharing, sending clients to
mhm,
contractors and taking a share, but then the work was completely off my plate. That was a massive shift. And
mm,
that's something that I would really recommend to entrepreneurs in particular. But if you're a corporate person listening and you've got a work team, that can be done as well, because we tend to get very stringy, very pulled apart. Scope creep is real. And when we don't intentionally take that back, we don't really move forward. And I stayed at the
mm,
similar revenue level for several years, for many years. And I think it was a direct result of some mindset, but mostly just the practical matter of taking too many projects, too small, not enough team, out of time.
Yeah. Can I jump in on
So
that? I want to talk about something that
yeah,
just stood out. And that is, I do think many of us start a business in the beginning as a response to something, a response to a
100%.
need, a response to request, and we continue to build the business around those requests, and we are responding and reacting, and it's great. There's business being asked for, there's business being given, right? And then suddenly, yeah, you realize you have like, 2,000 projects that pay, a few grand each, and you're like, this is crazy and too many people, and we need to, rein this in. And every woman hits this point. By the way, if you're here, I love doing this. I love nothing more than the red flip chart marker, and to
She's
start.
fun, guys.
In
If you
fact,
sign up
this
for
is really funny. I had a client come to me for a VIP day a few years ago, and she came in and she's like, my whole team's terrified. I'm like, why? She goes, they know someone's going to get fired after you. I'm like, am I known as like the axe man, that like your team is going to get canned or there'll
love
be
it.
changes made? But anyway, we start off like responding to these needs, and then we shift into then leading a category. And so many of the women that I know are in the trust, and when we're here for a big mission, but usually it starts as a response, and we're responding to things and we're serving, right? And then we see something we could lead, and we're like, oh, I'm going to do it this way, and I'm kind of pioneering. Then you suddenly realize that doing it differently, you're pioneering a whole new category. And that's kind of, what shifted for you when you saw that there's a better way to do this. I think I'm the one to do it. And you just started doing it.
Yeah, thank you. And Allie, the blade, yes, you'll definitely cut some of those things out. But it's a helpful process, and everybody needs to do it at some point. And you're right. Entrepreneurs, we get there. We go to that place where we have responded to the need, and now we've got to figure out, is that the lane we want to go down? Is this what I want on my epitaph? Quite literally, when I'm still in the grant business and someone got me on stage to speak and they introduced me as the grant lady, I damn near just walked off the stage and didn't even do the deal. I was like, is that who I am? Are we, and when you
Is
have
this
that,
my life?
yeah, when you have it, if you haven't already, and you'll have it multiple times in your career too. And I think that's also okay. Is pivot is totally acceptable. It doesn't mean you can't commit. It means that you are growing and evolving as a person, as a professional, as the industries are changing. And if you aren't doing that, then you're staying at that same
Mm,
revenue. And if you're staying at that same revenue and you're still spread too thin, then you're really at risk of being irrelevant or at least dated. And so those things won't
mm,
work either. So I think
yeah.
you do have to really make those shifts and those pivots. And you asked about what were some of the critical things. So that was one. The other one is one that I just started talking about. And you know this too. I had breast cancer 7.5 years ago. And for 7 years, I didn't talk about it. I was very fortunate. I didn't have chemo, so I didn't lose my hair and those obvious things that people see. And I really thought, I'm just doing this deal. I'm getting through it. I'm out of here. I'm back to work. Not wasting any time. Burning daylight, make hay while the sun shines, all these little things. And it turned out that wasn't the right way to handle it. And I think it took me a few years and a few things that happened. And we're all talking about some of our, as we evolve, bodies change, life changes. But I had to really come to terms with the changes that did happen, and that was okay. And I could move on from that. And you also have that, you get those terminal thoughts like, oh, well, what if it hadn't gone so well? Is this really what I want to be doing now? And so I made the decision this year for my 50th birthday to talk about that and to raise money for American Cancer Society. And it was one of the most rewarding things that I've done in many years. Just
Mm,
just going there. And I think I had to really give myself permission to be vulnerable, which is also a really big problem for many of us entrepreneurs. We just don't want to mess with that, or we're very uncomfortable with it, or we had those learned lessons going, maybe like you said, going back to the old childhood days, pick yourself up and take care of it. And we do. And
yep.
it's good to be strong, but it's good to share where you need support. And a lot of times people really are comforted by hearing that from you if you're a leader in the industry.
Yeah. What was the switch that flipped that made you finally want to share it with people?
It had been brewing for a long time. I had thought about it and I had, but I just wasn't sure like why. I didn't feel like just picking up my Facebook app one day and going, "Hey, y'all, I had cancer, but it's fine now." It just didn't seem right. But then a colleague referred me to this campaign, and they called me and said, "Hey, we're doing this. We're looking for 25 women and business leaders in Indianapolis, which is the bigger community where I'm from. She thought you might be interested." And that gave me a purpose and a platform.
Mm,
And it felt really comfortable to do that.
yeah. Wow. I love that. And I remember now you doing that. I don't think I quite realized what a big decision that was for you at the time.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
it was, but it was good. And I'll do it again. I think it's a great way to celebrate my birthday every year by doing a campaign and giving the money to someone else. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's life like for you now? Like what's a week like? I'm so bummed I never got to visit when you had that the property with the barns, and I know you still have the cows and all that, but I remember I had this was a few years ago, and it was post COVID, right? When everyone was thinking like, do we just go off the grid? Do we just do I just go live on a farm? And I was looking at your lifestyle. I'm like, oh my gosh, I would just love to have like some land and the kids run around and we have animals and stuff. And I'm like, this is Sarah Beth's life. So I know you've moved since then, but you still have your show cows. Like what's a week in life like for you and Carrie?
Well, yes, my husband Carrie and I, we do live still on an acreage here in Indiana with 30 acres. We still have the cows, and it is a great lifestyle. A life for me includes being up in the morning. Carrie does most of the chores on a daily basis, but I'm always out there every day, and it's just really important to me to be part of that. If you love animals, you love animals, and I really do. I love being a part of that. So it's every week. I travel a few times a month for speaking, to do corporate events and retreats for clients. So that's always on my calendar. Days for me are, I work from home. I've worked from home for 21 years. I don't know how those people do the work from Starbucks thing. I like my silence. I like my beautiful office that overlooks the farm. And I get a lot done working on, whether it's building out programs for clients, planning our events, working on writing IP. I spend a lot of time in my office when I'm home, and I love that. But we also try to be really involved here in the community. So a week for us includes, lunches, some community functions, heading to events. I do a fair amount of business within my community. I work all over North America, but I do have clients here. So that's great. So many of us don't go to client meetings, put on the suit, go pitch the thing. And I still do that. And
Yeah.
that's an enjoyable part of the week as well.
I need to get, yeah, I've, what I have now is like I have 2 home days that I plan. So Tuesdays and Thursdays are typically my days. I know I'm locked up at home. I get so much done. The other days I try to get out. Otherwise, I realize I go too crazy. If I'm out too much or home too much, I have to balance it out. And then also getting out also makes me like put on real pants and like like go to a co-working space and like maybe get different ideas. I'm with you on the coffee shop though. I've tried to do it. It's too overstimulating, or I start people watching too much and making up stories in my head about like what's
Yeah.
the deal with them. And
Yeah, totally.
so I have kind of like a balanced schedule now. And I think that works. You just have to figure out what works for you at the time. And
You do.
so that's good you get out. I wanted to ask, with all the you've obviously and have been very well networked in your career. Like a lot of your stories and your evolution, it comes from the people you're working with, people you're meeting. Like that's how things evolved. So tell me about what a community like the Trust has meant for you, why you chose to, stay with us,
Mhm.
and what this whole concept of, I know you do things with your own clients and people in your industry as well, and getting groups together. So tell me like your philosophies on that and why that's important to you.
So I know that you usually ask that question, and I'm so glad you did because I was ready for it. So I do lead my own groups, my own peer groups, and have a lot of those. But and you get a lot from them. Like you take from them too. Those ideas exchange, the being around people. But the big thing for the trust, I guess originally I joined because I didn't have a group like that. Most of my good friends are folks that work in a career or work in corporate or something like that. So the entrepreneurial journey was not, they know it to be the thing Sarah does. And it's a little bit of an enigma what I do all day. But they know that I'm successful and they're supportive and wonderful folks, but I don't have that entrepreneurial conversation with them. That, and then industry wise, in my industry, ag is both big and small. It's a global industry. It's an incredibly huge portion of the economy, the world economy. It's obviously how we eat and consume and those things. But it's a small close knit community too. And I really needed to meet people outside of the industry. And I
Mm.
wouldn't say I was bored, but I was bored. But it's also just ideas. It's content, it's value, it's how to do different things, it's flipping it on its head, it's looking at it in a different way. And you need to make new friends and new relationships, but you also need to be challenged differently. And I think when you get to a certain level in your career and in your industry, people don't challenge you. They expect you to be the
Mm.
one bringing it, and that's
Yeah.
great, and it's enjoyable to do. But when I come to the trust events, and this summer was a particularly valuable one for me from our June meeting, when I bring something new, you know, I usually am at the front of the room and I'm challenging the people. When I come to the trust, if I want someone to challenge me to help me get better at what I want to bring to my clients, we do that. And they can do that they know me. It's a great, comfortable relationship, but they don't necessarily know my industry. They're not a coworker. They're not a family member. My husband's heard me do all my complaining and whining and all my business building, and sometimes he's tired of being facilitated too. So you really need these other peers that can do
Yeah.
that, and you don't get that in most rooms.
Yeah.
And you don't want to be with beginners. We've all been beginners, but we're not beginners now. And so you need a different level of peer. And so trust
Yeah.
has been incredible for that.
I love that. And I love the energy that you've brought to, you give very good and direct feedback to the others as well. And it's like the women seem to want that. Once in a while, I'll have someone at the front of the room saying, I don't want any feedback. This is my plan. And I'm doing, in 2 weeks, we're having our fall planning mastermind for the next year. And I'm telling people, just, hey, if you don't want feedback, that's fine. Let us know. Cause sometimes it's okay. Sometimes you're like, I just need to speak out loud what I'm doing next year. And I remember I had a client once who just went to the front and said, I don't want any feedback from any of you. I'm just presenting this. And then sometimes though, they're like, challenge me, push my pricing, tell me why this won't work, tell me. And so I love the group so much because they really honor each other, wherever we're coming from. And they're all so different and from such different backgrounds, but everyone is there to support each other for what success looks like for them. So
Absolutely.
it's been so great. So one of my last larger events, when I had the iconic events, if you remember those, I had you on stage on a panel,
Yes.
and you got such a response from sharing something about when you were going through, I believe it was the transition where you had all the programs and all the clients, and you knew something had to change with the model. It wasn't sustainable. And you were talking about, because people kept talking about it later and they were using this as a catchphrase. It was the must add value, must add value. Do you remember that? Like you were
Oh, yeah.
banging,
Yeah.
you were imitating, banging your head and going must add value, must add value. Can you share that story with everyone? Because it was such it's just such a moment that I knew that people took with them after the event because they could all relate to that.
Yeah. And I think I would add that I'm happy to share it because it always still sticks with me. And it really, that process helped me to build, and you use this term all the time, that through line of repurposing some of the things that I was doing that weren't coming out right anymore, or were too many or too thin or too stretched, into a new way of delivery that's been really successful already. And it feels really good too. So that's nice. So the thing about must add value, I shared that because I was leading a peer group. I was coaching a small group, and one of the ladies, it were all women, and one of the ladies, she embodied this, just overwhelmed because she just felt like I never can seem to get enough of a leg up, and I never am. I'm doing all. We were challenging her. Why are you doing all this crap? And she was the one. She's throwing her head against her hand because she's like, every day I'm just saying must add value, must add value, must add value.
So we have her to thank. Okay.
Yes, we have her to thank. And then I started feeling that I'm like, that's me. I'm doing that too. Because everyone that calls wants something, and that's fine, but you're not all things to all people. And if you can't get over that, you're going to stay stuck. And you
Mm,
don't have to add value to everybody. And you can tell people no. You can tell them to F off too if you want, but if some of it can just be done very politely, I'm not a fit for you. And I'm not going to adjust my whole business model for you. And
yeah.
it's okay. It is probably
Yeah.
better than okay. It's the right thing to do.
Yeah. That is so hard for so many women where people
It is.
are, they want to serve everyone or they feel like everyone who comes to them, they need to design a program for. And I
Yes.
just was talking about this with actually one of our new members, because all the members get a bi-monthly call with me, and which is great because I know you've taken advantage of some of those too. And we get to go deep, and just I get to learn so much more about the members too, and then how to connect and help everybody. And she was talking about having this lower level program for years and was trying to make it work. And we all know the story, right? Like, take care of those people. And I said, I want to tell you a story. And this was after I was doing a lot of TV, back in like 2010, 2011. And we got all these people writing, and these, poor, I call them the lost souls looking for an answer. And so I thought that I had to help them too, So we created, and okay. And this is where it sounds so silly when I say it out loud to myself. And this is like funny. Let's create an offering for people with no money. Right. So on top of all the free stuff we do. So today, we give away so much free stuff and content and all this stuff. It's almost like we disregard that and think we need to create something for these folks. And for some people, their model, this is great. If you have a huge audience and you have like a mass market and you can do something on the lower end to help these people, then go for it. But for many of our businesses, that model is not a good fit and it's not sustainable. We had this like $10 a month CD. We would mail CDs out. This is like, and so I had to like hire someone to do the program. And these were the people, their credit cards would decline all the time. So we needed someone to do like,
we'll have to get them.
And then this took like 2 years. We're going through everything. And I had everything from like $100,000 offering to like the $10 a month thing. And we're like, we cannot keep doing this. And often this is where we feel that stretch, right? And when I'm on stage too, I will do the example, like, you can't be reaching up here and then reach down here at the same time. You're going to get pulled down. And so I just emphasize this as many times as I can when I have an opportunity, because it's something that women especially, I don't know why, but we hold on to those lower level offerings sometimes out of obligation. I think to worry how we'll be perceived if we let that go. Oh, she doesn't work with those people anymore,
Yeah,
or and it's an evolution where you are stepping into leadership. And it's something to really take note of if you're struggling with. And that's why I'm glad you told that story. So I always think of you, the must add value,
Yep.
like keep offering, giving more and more. So Sarah Beth, what is the reward in all of this for you?
So the reward, I thought about that a lot. I knew that was going to be part of it because of, like I said, longtime enjoyer of the show. And I thought about that a lot. And the answer came to me so clearly. And the reward is impact. It takes a while to get to that level. It takes a while to go from just, getting the business, creating the content, doing the work. Then we're talking like we were, how do we sort out what doesn't fit? And you still have to do that. That's housekeeping. That never stops to a certain extent. But then there's a place that businesses get the chance to come to and individual leaders get the chance to come to, and that's impact. And I built myself 5 standards for living this year. And I've worked really hard to try to judge all of my choices against those standards. Personal choices, business choices, programming, what I say yes to, who I take a call with, just all of those things. And it's been really helpful for me to stop doing too many of the things I shouldn't be doing, because if it doesn't meet these, then it's not good for everybody that I care about. And that's what impact is. And impact is one of the 5. So I wanted to weigh things against, if I invest my time in this, does it have impact for the people and the industries that I care about? It doesn't have to be instant, but it's got to be cumulative. So if I make the choice to take this call, this time and this person and this relationship, create an offering, create a program, create a conversation, create a dialogue that impacts people. And when you get the chance to get your career to the point where you can do that, it's incredibly rewarding. Now, I love to be successful. I love to make money. I love to be able to give. Those are things that are different than the way that I grew up. And that's an honor to have been able to achieve that through business. It really is. And gratitude, I give gratitude to God for giving me the skills, the gifts, and I hope to keep listening to continue to do that. But impacting those that you care about most. And again, that, like I said, could be an industry, your family, your industry, your church, your community, whatever it is. That's so rewarding. And
Mm.
you really feel, I guess you feel a little proud of yourself, but you also feel joy. And joy is a really cool side effect of doing what you want to do. We overlook that sometime in the grind. And I've tried not to do that this year and realize, what does it feel like to be happy? And giving back and having an impact makes me happy.
Isn't that one of the nice things about being at this age?
Yeah.
You're
Oh,
just
yeah.
so clear, like the clarity in your voice just, speaks volumes. And would you mind sharing the other? It's almost like you've come up with metrics to measure your success. And like, this is how I value success, and everything needs to fit into this, or it's a, thanks, but no thanks.
Yep. I would not mind. So number 1 is excellence. Number 2 is elegance. 3 is,
Mm,
yes, I love elegance. I love pretty things, beautiful things, quality things in
makes you
all
happy.
ways. It does make me happy. So we've got excellence, elegance, focus, impact, and love. And
Mm,
so those are what I'm trying really hard to weigh decisions against. And I have a journal. Sometimes I write them down to remind myself, did you, have you strayed away from this a little this week? And other times, on a walk, I'm just thinking, how have I been doing on that? Are we meeting that metric? And when you have metrics and you don't, you give yourself grace, you don't beat yourself up for them. There's no corporate scorecard here. It's really about, though, I set these because they do make me happy and they allow me to give happiness and to share that inspiration with other people. And it's been really helpful to just sort of even evaluate things that you do. You get to the end of the month or the end of the quarter and you evaluate your quarter. And sometimes you have a really great selling quarter and sometimes you don't. But if you've got this other set of metrics there, it's not a loss. There's still a gain, and
yeah.
that feels really positive.
Yeah. So beautiful. Where can people learn more about you and follow what you do?
Yes. So I'm on LinkedIn quite a lot under my name, Sarah Beth Aubrey. You can find me on there. I use LinkedIn probably as my most prolific social media. So definitely catch me there. We'll be posting articles and sharing a lot of our offerings and programs that we do. My website is theenvoygroup.co. So THEENVOY group.co. And that's obviously another great place to go. But those are probably the 2 best places to catch me when I'm out and about.
Awesome. And I forgot, am I going to see you in person in 2 weeks, or are you going to Zoom in for the
I am zooming in.
mastermind? Okay.
I wish I could be there. As you know, I love in person, and I, like you, do a lot of in persons, and that's my problem that day. I have an in person event that I'm leading.
Yeah.
Your event's 2 days, so one of the two, I will be doing that. So I'll be online.
Yeah.
But I'll
I'm
be there.
blown away because we put this out there kind of as a, hey, if you guys want to do this, we'll do it. More than half of the women are flying in. This was like a month notice, basically, right? And like more than half of them are coming in. So I'm thrilled.
I'm
It says a
thrilled
lot.
too. It says a lot, and the way that, if you're looking for a group, for those of you listening, and you're in that $1 million or more revenues area, you really need to contact Allie. And I know you do some kind of quarterly or so informational type sessions. Maybe that's about the cadence that you do those. So if you're listening, you need to check those out, because this is a different group. It's not for everyone, which makes it great. But the women that you have right now are so committed to sharing, so committed to each other. We are attending in person. People are really dedicated to being there in person, which that makes it. And then even online, the WhatsApp group, if you're off that thing for a day, you're behind 100 messages, right? Like we're really active in between sessions, which a lot of groups that I've been a part of are not. And so I
Mm.
love that as well, that we're really continuing our conversations regularly and kind of in real time, which keeps it very relevant.
Yeah, I love that. Well, thank you again for being part of this, and thank you for everything you shared today. And I can't wait to see you online in a few weeks.
I'll see you then, and I'll be with you in person in the spring.
Yay. Bye.
Alrighty, bye-bye.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. Subscribe now to the Reward Podcast to be sure to not miss an episode. And don't forget to visit jointhetrust.org to learn more about our modern community for forward-thinking 7- and 8-figure women entrepreneurs. You can learn more, apply to join us, Or refer another woman you know who is over the $1 million mark and is ready for a different type of women's network. We have events coming up, both live and online, that are truly creating new possibilities for female leaders. That's jointhetrust.org. See you there.